To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep. And if I continue, you'd probably sleep. Because what I just started, quoting the master Shakespeare, is irrelevant to this context. And theatre, which is the subject I will be talking about, sometimes we're told it's irrelevant, and it's fair. If it's irrelevant, it tends to be boring, it tends to change nothing, so we don't really care. But that is not what theatre, good theatre, is all about. And the first disclaimer I'd like to put out there is that theatre comes in different styles, different performances. This place, which was called the MITP, hosted loads of different shows. You get abstract, you get classic. And this is the first point I'd like to make. Because sometimes people tell me, I don't like theatre. But for me, it's like telling me, I don't like food. How can you not like food? You can not like pasta, prefer a steak to a ratatouille, but you can't not like food. And for me, that's the way I see theatre. The opportunities to experience this marvelous art form are enormous. So I think that most of the time, you or they've not discovered yet which theatre they like. And today I want to share with you my belief that life with theatre, be it comedy shows, circus, passion plays, can be better. And it's because we also can't eat pizza every day, and sometimes we just want to watch a good show. So the first reason, I'll give you 10 reasons, is that because I believe we forgot how to touch ourselves. And that's a metaphor there. I try to mention sexy. Around 4 years ago, Microsoft published a report that argued that widespread usage of smartphones has led to the deterioration of the attention span from 12 seconds to the year 2000 to around 8 seconds today. This is when you're on screen. Neuroscientists are claiming, I won't be going into detail, that distractions of the modern world are affecting the way our brain works. Now, I love movies, books, songs, TV. I used to love role-playing video games when I had time for them. But now, I feel there's really too much to choose from. It's stressful to choose. And when you do, it's very, very easy to change. You're watching something, you change. Today, video games, social media outsell movies and music recordings combined. We have thousands of marketing choices every day inviting us to consume different forms of entertainment, different forms of product, different forms of how to spend our free time, the little we have of it. So we spend ridiculous amounts of time doing this. And certain neuroscientists have warned about these dangers because they call them dangers by mentioning, for example, examples in China where people have died out of spending too much time on a screen or spending too much time watching a video game. It's almost dystopian. My point is that we face an unprecedented assault at what we call our free time. And I think that theatre can really make a difference there. The danger is that we become irrelevant. We have a lot of competition, right? Because we live in the age of distraction. But the Titanic went down because of a distraction. All these things I mentioned have one thing in common. They avoid communion. They avoid this. They avoid contact with ourselves and other people. Theatre gives us this and much more. When you come in here to watch a show, you're here. You're mine, and I'm yours. And that's it. You can't change me. You can't decide to listen to another song. You can leave, but that's a big decision in a theater. So we build a relationship, right? And you're afraid to leave because you say, he's going to feel a bit offended. So there's a relationship. No one left. And I'm not talking about sex. You're here because you want to be taken for a ride. When you're watching a show, you want to be taken for a ride, literally. If this theater was empty, it would be boring. There would be nothing here. It would be sad. An empty theater makes you feel sad. But you come in, an actor comes in, and anything could happen. You don't know what's going to happen, so anything can happen. So the second reason is because we naturally like to be human. The gathering of humans in a space like this, telling stories, is a universal cultural phenomenon that existed in every society around the world. The Greeks, the Egyptians, everyone had theater in some form or another. With subjects which speakers before me mentioned. Antigone, Lysistrata, Pirandello later on, the subjects that theater has treated are enormous in every society, in every civilization. What does that mean? For me, it means that in some ways, theater helps us come closer to understand what it means to be human. We are the only species that have theater. I believe it is a need for humanity, an instinct. We mimic, we want to create stories, we want to create meaning, narrative, metaphor. We like it. We remember when we were kids, when I was young, I used to imagine characters and imagine these stories, and I'm battling, and suddenly I'm a doctor, and so I used to imagine characters all the time, imagining stories and relationships all the time. Being Mediterranean, we see this every day. We tell stories, we're very theatrical when we tell them. So I think we really just can't help it. It's part of what makes us human. And studies have actually shown that when we attend theater, we feel happier. Dr. Natasha Krikam, who's a neuroscientist, I'm very interested in neuroscience myself, having studied the subject when it comes to theater, says that there's clear evidence that attending performances can help enhance social bonds and play a role in developing emotional intelligence. And these are scientific studies. So we want to be taken on that ride I mentioned. You know it's theater, but you want to believe it. You want to be aesthetically pleased. Theater maintains the suspension of disbelief. Even though you know that these are actors, you want to believe it, you need to believe it. It's almost hypnotic. It makes you receptive to new ideas, good ideas, bad ideas, dangerous secrets that you might share with an actor, but you'll never tell anyone. So it's something between you and that actor. An actor who's murdering someone, and you felt that, and it scares you. You won't tell anyone. But in that moment, it's hypnotic. It makes you want to play with possibility, and play is good. Play is a massive catalyst to empathize, to understand each other. And my next point is that theater cannot harm you, even if it's wrong. It's one of those human activities where you can't really hurt, you can't really... what's the worst that can happen? You can not enjoy a show, but sometimes you don't have to enjoy a show. So theater teaches us about ourselves in ways where it's not always entertaining. That means there can be bad characters, wrongdoings. Theater can offend, it can create hatred. You can see murder, rape, protest. It can irritate, it can bore you because it wants to. And great theater makers have done this. From Sarah Kane to Dennis Kelly to Jean-Paul Sartre. Many artists have created unconventional moments that still work in their context. We can be a very cruel species, so why not have cruel theater? By having that, we can create tears to oppose hate, disgust to oppose violence, and so forth. By watching Lady Macbeth, you don't want to be like her. By watching Abigail Williams in The Crucible, you might feel sorry for her, but cannot accept what she's done. By watching Perubu in Uburwa, you are disgusted. By watching Ines in No Exit, you are bored and irritated, and you feel you don't want to stay there. You want to leave the theater. But Sartre wanted that. So theater can make you realize you are wrong, or it makes you realize what is wrong for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. So that's one misconception that I find. It does not always have to be entertaining in the jolly kind of way. It can make you imagine what your life would be like if you were in that situation. It may want you to change something about your life. And believe me, you don't get that in movies. Because sometimes I get the answer that, well, I can watch a film and feel the same way. No, neuroscientists have shown that mirror neurons exist, and when you see something live, it's different. Your brain works differently. When you're here, it's not the same. Theater will help you understand how your mind works, and it helps us see how the environments in which we live affect who we are and who we will become. Theater influences the way we think and feel about our own lives and encourages us to take a hard look at ourselves sometimes, at our values and at our behavior. It doesn't always have to be comfortable, and that's okay. What's beautiful is that this is always a personal decision. It may have nothing to do with what the person next to you is thinking, what the director or playwright wanted to create. You may watch a huge argument between a husband and a wife and think, oh, we're not so bad after all. But the person next to you could think, I don't want to look like that anymore. I was doing that yesterday. While the one behind you could be saying, oh, I miss having sex with my wife. And you don't know it. So the next reason is, these are just snippets from projects I've been involved in recently. It's because it's better when we're together. When we're together, there's a magic that is not present when you're alone, watching a movie, reading a book. So, research actually shows that audience heart rates tend to synchronize when watching theater. Your heart rate synchronizes when watching a show. That's unbelievable for me. The same research also says that theater is as good for your heart as 30 minutes of cardio, so you're exercising. And so I believe that we as human beings together are greater than every swipe, than every screen. We want to talk, we want to hug, we want to commune. We were made to be together, and there's a feeling of something happening because we are together. We're a pack, and no Instapic tweet or video game will give us that. No Instapic video game or tweet will have a beautiful life. No film can create that effect. Theater reminds us, do you mind? Did you feel the tension? That was prepared, right? But you said, oh, that wouldn't have happened at home in a show. You felt, that's theater. A film will not give you that, ever. And in this ever-changing digital era, we realize we have bodies and we want to share these moments together. So, as I said, theater brings people together. Because for a performance to happen, for this to happen, you have to come here. So anything from 100 or 1,000 people need to gather in one place at the same time and share together an event that may be anything from tragic, funny, moving, thought-provoking, or hopefully at least just distracting. But in 10 years of doing theater, I have seen a general joie de vivre in audiences. They react in some way or another, whether they loved it or hate it. They are in some way more alive after they leave the show. In an age where most of our communication happens in front of a screen, I think that this gathering function of theater on its own is something that really matters. Here I go to number 5. Because no man, even if Maltese, is an island. So, theater makes us thrive as an industry. It contributes to our economy and plays a special role in the revitalization of neglected places. But also, theater shows us that we're not an island and we're living in a world full of stories that are similar or not so similar. We learn about the French Revolution because of Molière, in some ways, because of how he was reinterpreted. We learn about lots of other spaces because of their stories. And we get Bertolt Brecht if we want to see stories about Germany. We get Gogol if we want to see Russian imperialism. So theater happens everywhere because we want to share our cultures, we want to share our stories, and they understand us and we understand them. And suddenly, it might not be us and them anymore. This is Italian Commedia dell'arte, which is a European art form nowadays. It started in Italy in streets, and it was taken by the greatest mimes ever, who ever lived in France, Jacques Lecoq. Theatre makes us strive, and we are already seeing it in Malta with places in Zaytun and Slima. The neighborhoods are thriving because theatre opens. When a theatre opens, restaurants open. It shows that there needs to be an economy there. So besides the audiences going to the theatre, you have a reaction in the whole neighborhood. And I happen to have seen this because I do Notte Bianca. And when I've seen Notte Bianca grow, I can see from afar that it made a huge difference. People started believing that culture can change a street. And suddenly, because you make an event, they say, oh yes, if I get performers performing here, more people will come. And it suddenly started. Today, every village has some sort of its own event, its own mini event. They have even more than one. Now, the quality of each one may vary, but they're there. And they show that culture, and here I'm speaking of all the live arts, can really change a space. The seventh reason is because it helps. Here I'd like to show you this because it's something very close to my heart. I was the first clown of Dr. Clown in hospital, and the first patient I visited, it was not even accepted yet, was, and I salute his memory, Father Peter Saracino-Nglot. And this is something that theatre does today. It helps. And it does it for two reasons, for the artist and for the audience. It always did it, but today, like no other age, we have artists who are called by people like Ben Cameron hybrid artists. Today, a writer doesn't write for the National Theatre anymore, only. He will, or she will, but she'll also apply for funding to write for schools. Actors act in prisons. Dramaturgs work with old people. All the time. 10 out of 10 artists would be doing this. There, I think, is an example of why we today need theatre more than ever. Because communities want to have this physical relationship, this physical contact, this experience. And communities need it. That's why artists are seeing a financial, why not, opportunity to work, but also a magical opportunity, because when theatre helps, it's magical. And I'd like to mention a project which I'm very proud of as part of TEDxUniversityofMalta, the National Theatre Company. In December, watch out for it, we're producing a pantomime in the dark, where you go in and you see a whole pantomime in the dark. And blind people will be actually performing and making it happen. Whilst other blind people can enjoy it, but everyone can. And whilst producing this project, you see emotions, you see magic. So theatre helps. The other reason is that because our senses need training too. It's called well-being. I did not know about that TED Talk, so this is a coincidence, but senses are of huge importance. And sometimes we forget that they also need education. It's called well-being, as it said, and theatre, like everything, exists in different qualities. Sometimes I compare it to food again, because sometimes I want to eat my grandma's rabbit, right, and lick my fingers, and sometimes I want to eat a Michelin star meal. But since I'm a theatre maker, I can't afford it. And even if I would afford it every day, I still would not eat the Michelin star meal every day, because I will want my rabbit. I will want my plate of pasta from my mother, who's not the greatest cook in the world, but I love that. And that difference is what makes it worth it. That is why sometimes I love watching a traditional community theatre farce, and sometimes I want to watch an avant-garde professional theatre maker boggle my mind. My point is that it is healthy to have this difference in theatre too. Amateur theatre makers are important as professional ones, and today we live in an age where everybody can create material and share it. So yes, the border between amateur and professional today is always becoming blurrier. We have an unprecedented level of amateur artists working at a professional level. But that does not mean that everything is good, and we should not just experience bad every day either. That is why watching good theatre is even more important. That is why today, even more than ever, our senses need to be educated, because we have so much in front of us. Otherwise, we might sink in mediocrity. And here goes the alarm. Bzz. This word triggers the elitist judgment. When discussing art, mentioning good and bad is always controversial in some ways, and I will not go into the terminology of this because it will take ages. However, let me say that sometimes I find that here in Malta we are living in a situation where you have to treat a March tal-Festa in the same way you treat Charles Camilleri, or a Wirja tal-Vari in the same way we treat works by Austin Camilleri. Now, those who know me know I love festas, I love pop culture, I love religious culture, but I don't think that they should be compared in the same way. For example, it is risky to say that we have high cultural attendance because many people participate in religious ritual or watch the Eurovision, when these audiences would never attend a professional show. And that is a problem. It would be an extremely limited view of cultural attendance. That is why it is important to have good criticism and the public with educated senses. Otherwise, we end up with a mediocre ecosystem. So experiencing good art and preferring it to bad art, or to okay art, or to something which you would not call art is only natural. It is not elitist, and there is nothing wrong with saying it. Everyone likes to watch Real Madrid over Mdina Nights. This is with great respect to Mdina Nights, a club I was strangely a founder and vice president of. But our senses need training, comfort, and pleasure, just like we want to watch Real Madrid. Just like when your body needs its own caring and you go to a spa, a gym, or have a massage, you want a good one. You want a good massage. Our senses need that too. So it's good to watch a good show and experience good art in general, because this elevates the mind in more ways than one. Besides, we are living in a world where work, economy, money, and not spending free time is glorified all the time. If you see what our politicians and our leaders mention in their speeches, you'd find work, 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 opposed to culture, art, relaxation, well-being. The difference is huge. And I think that's not life. So the more educated our public senses are, the higher is our standard of living. And that brings me to my next point. Education and creativity are, for me, like Romeo and Juliet. It never really worked, but it really should. The next obvious point, so, is that theatre helps our children develop their creativity. It is a means to educate their senses all the time. Our education system increasingly puts the emphasis on everything else, and we often forget the importance, the huge importance of creative expression, creative consumption, and art. We have to educate our children's senses, and theatre is a great way to learn this. Going to the theatre teaches us about people, places, ideas. Learning in a theatrical setting is fun. It's more fun than a class. Both the making of theatre and attending theatre contribute to education and literacy, and this has been scientifically proven. We learn about societies, history, culture, and studies have shown that students who participate in theatre do better in school. Because making plays together, playing together with theatre also draws kids out of their shells and helps them learn to socialize in a productive and healthy way. So theatre teaches our kids how to express themselves more effectively. So it's not just about the senses, it's also about being human in a society. It develops their ability to communicate their thoughts and feelings to others, improving the relationships. And this, I think, is crucial. And sometimes I think it's more crucial than knowing stuff, let me not just pinpoint a subject, which you don't use ever again. That's a whole other discussion. The last point, because it can speak about or provoke change, and I like change. Theatre is a cultural space where society examines itself in a mirror, and it has been long looked at as a laboratory in which you can study problems that we confront society all the time and attempt to solve those problems in ways that we haven't seen before. So theatre models us for a kind of public discourse that lies at the heart of democracy and builds our skills for listening to different sides of a conversation or an argument without arguing. So you can disagree, but you can see the point more clearly. So it empathizes with the struggles of our fellow human beings, whatever their views may be. When we watch a play, we learn what happens when conflicts get resolved and what happens when they do. We develop our faculty for imagining the outcomes of various choices we or people we disagree with might make in their personal lives and their political lives. Believe me, this is not something that would happen in a live public debate on TV or any other medium. So it's not surprising that in repressive societies, theatre has often been aligned with the movement towards openness and freedom. In South Africa, theatre played a huge role in the struggle against apartheid. In the Czech Republic, a playwright became leader of the new democracy. If our own ministers, parliamentary secretaries, and members of the opposition went to the theatre more often, I suspect we'd all be much better off. Theatre in Malta, in fact, in the 80s and 90s was ultra-political. We have just forgotten it and not written about it. Politeatru, Cooperaturi, I heard stories of electricity being got for one group, funds blocked for another. It was very political. And it affected the way we spoke. It was very present in every village. You had their teatrine. We have Lancha Ġejja Oħra Sejra because of a theatre show. But we don't know it. The stage commandos used it in one of their shows and it remained. So theatre is present and it changes. In history, theatre was feared, even here, as much as it was loved. Theatre was banned as much as it was used, and theatre is still very powerful today. When I directed Jien Nħobb Inti Tħobb in 2014, there was a whole controversy surrounding the play due to LGBTI issues at the time. We all know how that turned out and what situation Malta is in when it comes to LGBTI. Well, Jien Nħobb Inti Tħobb is still to this day the highest grossing Maltese theatre piece produced at the Manuel Theatre. Sibna Żejt, a play I later directed, was a dystopian piece on corruption at the highest levels of Maltese society and the selling of land and other stuff. Balċunetta Towers was about Floriana being replaced with two high-rise towers. Tal-linja qbillek żgur was about alienations by means of unkept promises. The Crucible, which I am directing next month at the Manuel Theatre, is about people judging people who disagree with them as witches and killing them for different reasons. When it is a complex issue, theatre can make the audience experience it themselves besides having it discussed. So why don't we not have more theatre dealing with different views of current issues and situations so that we can improve them together? This, I think, is also crucial. Now, I would like to say that the shift I would like to see is that if any of you haven't been to the theatre in the next month, I've convinced you to go watch a show in the next one. And I'll finish the way I started by quoting another masterpiece. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Rudyard Kipling. Thank you.